He was a killing machine, confidently converting his punching power advantage, but Trinidad's transition to middleweight was fatal and partly buried his career. After this battle, he could no longer represent the formidable force that he was before. Today we will talk about the legendary fight of Felix Tito Trinidad against Bernard the Executioner Hopkins and reveal all the details of the infamous 2001 fight.
Come to us, come to us.
On Tuesday morning, September 11th, 2001, the United States was rocked by a series of hijackings and attacks on the homeland. Two planes crashed into the World Trade Towers in New York City and one into the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. Another was downed in Pennsylvania. The calamity of the attacks and loss of innocent lives was heartbreaking. As the country mourned, it also united in the face of terror and prepared for war. Scheduled for just 4 days later, not far from Ground Zero, Madison Square Garden was to host a middleweight championship showdown between Bernard the Executioner Hopkins and Felix Tito Trinidad. A decision was quickly made to cancel the fight indefinitely. Other cancellations included all NFL games that were scheduled for the following Sunday. After promoter Don King sought and received assurances from officials at both Madison Square Garden and from New York City, the bout was rescheduled 2 weeks after its original date. The fight was officially moved to September 29th. Interestingly, if the attack had been carried out just over an hour later, Hopkins could have been one of the victims. Next to the WTC, he hosted media training for journalists and spectators. The bout was billed as "And Then There Was One." It showcased a unification for the middleweight championship. Hopkins, the WBC and IBF champion, would face Trinidad, the WBA champion. The winner would be the first recognized undisputed middleweight champion since Marvin Hagler. By the way, a video about which I previously made on the channel. Felix Tito Trinidad defended his IBF welterweight world title 15 times from 1993 to 1999 and has already become a boxing superstar. Controversial or not, he beat Oscar de la Hoya in their unification megafight, as I covered in the previous video, and made significant defenses against Pernell Whitaker, Obakar, Luis Ramon Campos, and Hector Camacho. But when Trinidad decided to move up to light middleweight, he didn't plan to stay in the division. Trinidad and his father/trainer Felix Trinidad Sr. saw this phase as a short stop on the road to middleweight glory and beyond. At that time, Trinidad was in its prime and making big plans. His short stint as a light middleweight, only 9 months in 2000, was unforgettable. It was a devastating 3-fight streak against quality opponents with an overall record of 67-1, including 2 undefeated American Olympians David Reed and Mamadou Thiam. And as a result, Trinidad unified the 2 major titles against Fernando Vargas in what was arguably the greatest fight in light middleweight history. 5 months later, Trinidad moved up to middleweight. But it was the 3-fight, 154-pound streak that culminated in Trinidad being named Fighter of the Year of 2000 by The Ring and other publications that went a long way in cementing his legacy in the Boxing Hall of Fame. Moving up to middleweight, Trinidad won the world title in his next fight, knocking out William Joppy in the semifinals of a tournament hosted by Don King and HBO to crown the undisputed champion at 160 pounds. Hopkins was regarded amongst the best fighters in the world. With only 2 losses on his dossier, one in his professional debut and the other to Roy Jones Jr., Hopkins had not lost a fight in over 8 years. He won the IBF title in April of 1995 with a 7th-round knockout of Segundo Mercado. After 12 successful defenses, Hopkins met Keith Holmes in April of 2001. He defended his IBF crown a 13th time while winning Holmes' WBC middleweight title via a unanimous decision. At 36, and without a loss in his last 19 fights, Hopkins signed to meet the younger Trinidad and was quickly installed as a 3-1 underdog. Hopkins was very confident in his victory. One company even paid him $100,000 up front to enter the ring with their advertisement. Bernard took the whole amount, went to the bookmaker's office, and bet all this money on himself. Tensions were high between the fighters, as were the anxieties and emotions of an entire country in the wake of September 11th. Fans saw the bout as a much-needed distraction, as many either attended the fight in person or watched on pay-per-view. The world of boxing did not give Bernard too many chances, and even then there were speculations that Trinidad, having unified 3 middleweight belts, would go up again, straight to the heavyweight division to fight Roy Jones Jr. Specialists tended to favor Trinidad's victory.
Sometimes it means real fireworks from the opening bell. Trinidad.
As the bout got underway, Hopkins immediately began to employ a game plan that he would follow with scrupulous precision throughout the night. He controlled the action with his left jab, pumping it repeatedly into Trinidad's face. He continuously circled to his left to take away Trinidad's best punch, the left hook, and kept the action in the center of the ring.
Bernard Hopkins want to keep hugging. Statistic first round by CompuBox numbers.
Trinidad continued to stalk Hopkins in the second round. With time winding down in the round, Hopkins unloaded a right hand that impaled on Trinidad's face just before the closing bell.
Hopkins, biggest blow of the fight. Trinidad momentarily stunned.
As the fight approached the middle rounds, it became clear, as was articulated in the pre-fight countdown by Emmanuel Stewart, that Trinidad's game plan was to simply attack Hopkins and try to knock him out. Trinidad anxiously looked to land his left hook. The superior tactical movement by Hopkins was severely limiting the use of Trinidad's best punch.
Trinidad misses with the right. Hopkins lands his own. Back Tito landed 3 punches in a row. Didn't see them. Bernard once again is spending too much time on the rope.
Hopkins continued to follow the game plan in the 5th.
Yeah, but Hopkins has used a lot of different footwork, legs up, moving around.
As the bell rang to end the round, the two continued firing bombs at each other. As the timekeeper continued to pound the bell, Smager tried to separate the fighters. The energized crowd roared as Lampley shouted, "They fight after the bell," and Hopkins dishes out twice as much. Undaunted, Trinidad continued to come forward in round 6, bouncing on his toes and looking to attack. As Trinidad would try to trap Hopkins against the ropes or in a corner, Hopkins would slickly duck away and land straight right hand counter punches. The 6th round action intensified as the two began trading head-on in the center of the ring.
Trinidad still sitting in a sitting position. Hopkins looks pretty good on and starting to accumulate. Trinidad ripping left hooks now.
Absolutely frustrated at the end.
Flat. That's what you want. If he's going to hit South Africa.
Fight. 36. Still seems.
Trinidad got in a quick shot on Hopkins' neck. Bernard lands a...
But Hopkins is not loading up on these rights.
Hopkins was in complete control of round 10. With just 9 minutes remaining in the fight, it was clear that Trinidad was aware that time was running out. He hit the accelerator in a frantic attempt to hurt Hopkins and change the flow of the fight. Trinidad attacked with reckless abandon as Hopkins continued to circle and outmaneuver him. Picking his spots with the accuracy of a marksman, Hopkins continued to counter beautifully and frustrate Trinidad.
round of his career.
As the two touched gloves to begin the 12th and final round, Trinidad appeared to have little, if anything, left. Hopkins coolly continued to impose both his will and skill.
And his skill on the man who is tonight.
At the end of the first minute of the 12th round, Hopkins hit the Puerto Rican with a right hook exactly in the jaw, knocking him down.
Up in his career, never before knocked out, goes down.
His heart and desire still intact, Trinidad rose. His trainer and father, however, had seen enough as he climbed into the ring to stop the fight and embrace his son. The bout was halted at 1:18 of round 12. At the time of the stoppage, Hopkins was well ahead on all three scorecards. Ring Magazine would name Hopkins the Fighter of the Year and select round 10 as the round of the year. After the loss to Hopkins, Trinidad would fight just 4 more times. He would score wins over Hasan Cherifai and Ricardo Mayorga. He would lose his final 2 bouts to Winky Wright and Roy Jones Jr. Hopkins continued to defy both logic and paternal time. He continued to fight and compete at a high level. 8 years later, the opportunity to organize a rematch arose, but Trinidad eventually retired from boxing, and Hopkins eventually waited for a rematch with Roy Jones Jr., and he used the chance by beating Roy on points.